The 2023 Mazda CX-50 is a hugely important car for the brand. And while it definitely delivers where it needs to, Mazda also made some confusing choices. Subscribe and hit the bell for notifications if you enjoy fun, detailed car reviews and content on vehicles from every category, new and used. Thank you. Okay, so you're gonna have a choice of two engines here. The 2.5 liter naturally aspirated inline four, it's direct injected. It does have cylinder deactivation, which I'll talk about a little bit here later. The turbocharged engine, which is underneath the hood of this model, is a forced induction version of the naturally aspirated 2.5 liter, and that's gonna make 256 horsepower, 320 pound-feet of torque on premium fuel. Right now, we're running regular, and that's 227 and 310 pound-feet of torque. Either way you go, you're gonna be paired up with a 6-speed automatic that I might wish had a couple extra gears. Still, it's an in-house unit, it's a tried and true transmission, so there are some pros to it. While the powertrains have been in Mazda's lineup for quite some time, everything else here feels pretty fresh. And I'm digging these proportions. The CX-50 is wide for the class, but narrow at the mirrors, giving it a wide body stance that might help handling, but it doesn't help on the inside, unlike the added length. What do the Mazda CX-50 and Queen Elizabeth have in common? They both stand at just 5'4". Briefly, I'd like to thank the helpful people over at Royal South Mazda Volvo in Bloomington, Indiana. Their staff is attentive and honest. If you're looking for a new Mazda and small town service, check them out. Mazda suspects that turbo buyers will take corners at neck-breaking speeds and gives them adaptive headlights that swivel around corners. First off, standard LED headlights. No fog lights available here. That's kind of been a Mazda trend for quite some time, just because the lights have been getting so good that it's making those almost obsolete. You also have 8.3 to 8.6 inches of ground clearance depending on the wheels. But the approach angle of just 18 degrees will have you scraping more obstacles than kids at middle school track meets. If you need more off-road prowess, Mazda has not announced a true wilderness or trailhawk rivaling trim. The best that you're going to get are some mild all-terrain tires with the Meridian package, which is going to be more limited run and is coming later in the year. Now, if you thought that other Mazda products have a lot of trim names, ooh, you're going to start off with the base model, then the Select, then the Preferred, and then the Preferred Plus, which just adds a panoramic sunroof to the Preferred. At 10 trims, just check out this nice breakdown on the screen. One kind of unfortunate quirk here, if you want a 360 view camera or front parking sensors, you have to step up to not just the Premium Plus, but the Turbo Premium Plus. So you're spending over 40 grand for those things. Now, one thing that Mazda's been doing as of late that I really appreciate is standard all-wheel drive. And really, this comes in, what, under 28 grand or just around 28 grand at the base model? For that, I mean, you're getting an all-wheel drive, pretty premium SUV that drives well. That's a pretty good bargain, especially when you consider the size of this thing, too. However, it seems like nobody has reviewed a base model yet, and I really want to be the first, but unfortunately, this was all I could find today. So subscribe, and I will get that base model review as soon as I can. Now, I have tried out the 2.5 liter on multiple occasions, putting up 0 to 60 times around the mid 8-second mark. Now we're going to try the turbocharged engine on regular fuel and see what we can do to 60 miles per hour. This does have cylinder deactivation, which I just shut off. It's only on the turbocharged models though. I'm going to shut off traction control, which is nice. You get a dedicated button. I'm going to put it into its sport mode, which you have an off-road mode here. That improves like the side-to-side torque vectoring for off-road situations. AC off, traction control off, sport mode. Oh. The shifts are still pretty slow from the 6-speed auto. Off the line grunt pretty good. 0 to 60 came up in a respectable 6.9 seconds, which I think should be plenty for most people. However, it is worthy to note that I was able to get 5.8 in the same place a couple weeks ago with the Subaru Outback XT, which also just uses regular fuel. While this part is all subjective, I have to give Mazda a nod for the aesthetics here. Despite the little excessive amount of body cladding that, could be trimmed down a bit, let me know what your thoughts are. I really like the strong lines of this thing and the wide stance. You're gonna have 17-inch wheels standard in about half of your CX-50s here. And you'll get 20-inch wheels if you go up to the Premium Plus, and you'll get special 18-inch wheels if you go with the Meridian. Key features here I should note: proximity unlock will come on everything except for the base model. Around back, you'll see real tail pipes, LED tail lights, and if you get the preferred trim, you'll have a power rear gate. All models will come with a body-colored spoiler and these fake vents that add some definition to the CX-50's butt. While this doesn't look like a wagon, the CX-50 is a full 6 inches longer than the CX-5, giving it one of the biggest footprints in the class, something you feel on the road. Now, taking the CX-50 up to a little bit of speed here, it gets up to 70, no problem. I actually didn't even really register how fast I was going, to be honest. And I was noticing this earlier, but I do feel higher off the ground than I did in the CX-5. But that could also be an illusion from the higher belt line and the more prominent hood here. Which is a polarizing trait. Some will like being able to see this wide front end. It feels mean yet reassuring, and the smaller windows also remind me more of a sporty hatchback than something my kid might spill applesauce in. Others will see these traits and find it far less approachable than its foes. When it comes to road noise, it's alright, not noticeably better or worse than a CX-5 or Forester, but it's a bit disappointing if you're comparing it to something more posh like a Subaru Outback or Toyota Venza, with some wind noise creeping into the cabin around the mirrors, along with tolerable tire noise. While I can't call the ride serene for the money, Mazda has been nailing interior quality the past several years, and the CX-50 is no exception. The interior of the CX-50 seems like it's having a bit of an identity crisis, but it's still an overall pretty nice place to be. So let me explain myself. First off, these seats are probably one of Mazda's best. After first sitting in it, it felt like the seat bottom was a little harsh, but it's not too aggressive anywhere. It doesn't squeeze you too tight, but it also does try to hold you in. I do wish I had more thigh support, and I do wish that you didn't have to go up to the preferred trim in order to just get lumbar adjustment. That seems like something that should really be standard in a car like this, especially if it's trying to be more premium. Additionally, the stitching on the seat bottom feels like a wedgie at first, so these seats won't work for everyone. But that aside, these seats are more agreeable than I would say what's in a lot of Mazda products, but behind something like a Subaru Outback, which this kind of seems like it's squarely aimed at. But its desire to be more rugged also makes it a step backward for the brand in some regards. There's less soft touch materials in here than even what was in the CX-30 I drove not too long ago. You have hard touch plastics where your knees rest. The grab handle here is also more of a hard touch plastic, but it just seems like something they didn't have to sacrifice. On the flip side, there's fancy stitching. The dashboard and vents look like they are made of authentic materials, and there isn't an overly abundant use of glossy black plastics. This feels like it will age well. You also have kind of a more cramped feel in here than something like an Outback. It kind of results in it feeling almost more skinny than even the CX-5. That's also thanks to the thick door panel and center console. But yeah, I mean, some of you guys are gonna like this more cockpit feel, but a lot of you aren't. I also think this is a very simple cabin, and I really like that. Overall, the screen here is better integrated into the dashboard. It doesn't look like it was a complete afterthought. Standard, you'll have a 7-inch multifunction display in here. That isn't really a full digital gauge cluster, but I like how it's integrated with the analog gauges. It's just not super customizable. If you're looking for a more techie car, none of the cars in Mazda's lineup are gonna provide you with that. The standard infotainment system comes with a 8.8-inch screen. This one's got a 10.3-inch one, and it's the same UI. You're gonna have wireless Apple CarPlay and Android Auto standard, which is great. The UI itself is just a bit oversimplified, and it makes some things like just trying to tune the radio a little bit more of a hassle than I would think it would need to be. But at least the dial here is satisfying to use, and while you're driving, you can kind of just rest your hand on this nice soft center console and control the infotainment without getting too distracted by trying to pinpoint your finger while driving. And I like how they get all of these analog controls and stuff, and they use such few buttons. It makes your interactions with the car's controls quick, so you can focus on driving, and the clickiness makes it a little gratifying despite it all being plastic. When it comes to features, You really get a lot with going with the Select, like, you know, a leatherette wrapped steering wheel, leatherette seats. If you go to the Preferred, you'll get heated seats with that aforementioned power function and lumbar adjustment. Premium buyers will get the Bose sound system, which is a 12-speaker unit here, and it works really well. I really enjoy it. Great speaker placement, very clear high end, enough bass. But if you stick with any lower trim, the 8-speaker Mazda acoustic audio system is stellar for the price from my past experience. But once again, Mazda stiff arms higher trim buyers into climbing the ladder further. Premium buyers get ventilated front seats and a heads-up display, but a heated steering wheel puts you at a Turbo Premium. Heated rear seats will stick you at a Turbo Premium Plus, something you can get at a much cheaper level in other competitors. For me personally, the furthest I would go is the Turbo trim. Now, hopping behind myself at 6'3" in my regular driving position, I have just enough space for my legs to clear here. If you're looking for a Mazda SUV with a big back seat and no third row, this is the model. I have plenty of thigh support here, there's a pretty low floor, and so long as you don't get the base model, you will have dual zone automatic climate control with rear vents and rear USB ports. All CX-50s come with really wide opening rear doors. Panaroof models still leave me with enough headroom. Sitting in the back of the CX-50, I have enough space, but there are a few interesting quirks here. They got rid of the 40-20-40 split versus the CX-5, which was a nice touch. So you just have a 60-40 split here. And you have to spring for the Select to get rear seat releases back here. This is a pretty long cargo area. However, it's not very tall, notably shorter than the CX-5s, and even a little bit skinnier than the CX-5s as well. It's just got length going for it. The CX-50 finally gives Mazda an entry in the class with a sizable back seat, but the trunk still isn't impressive, and now it has a little worse materials and visibility. It might sound like I've been negative so far, but that's only because my expectations for Mazda are high. Truly, this has great fit and finish for the segment. It looks fresh, it feels high quality, just not as luxurious as I've seen from the brand. Around corners and rough roads, this is also a mixed bag, mainly because this is still based on the Mazda CX-30, which means torsion beam rear suspension, not fully independent. On a more typical back road like this at a little bit higher speed, the CX-50 gives me a feeling of confidence. It's not as posh as a Subaru or Toyota, but you know, the steering I think is a little bit more numb than what I've found with the CX-5, maybe just a little bit, but it's very well calibrated. It's, like I've said for a few other Mazdas at this point, second nature, and the steering has a nice weight to it as well. One that might actually be a little heavy for some people's taste. I think that the CX-5's smaller footprint there made it feel almost like it wanted to rotate a little bit quicker than this does. This is about the worst road that I'm going to be able to take this thing on. It's still on the firm side, and it definitely can get bothered by some of the larger potholes there, especially if it is disrupted mid-corner, something that non-independent rear suspension cars are known for. Do I think most people will actually feel the difference? Probably not. However, it does mean that poise and security I feel behind the wheel of the CX-50 from things like the direct steering and minimal body roll exist in the conditional sense. Push it too hard over bad roads and it will show the true colors of this cost-cutting measure, lending another advantage to the more agile CX-5 and a multitude of others. And that's a shame because this does feel great around twisty roads, and I find the suspension pretty supple until it reaches its limits. It's like Mazda realized they were making cars that handled better than they really needed to. And then with it in sport mode, throttle response definitely sharpens up. You know, I don't really register myself having to plant the throttle and wait for the turbo. If you're looking for a crossover in this segment with more power that also has good response, this is the one. Getting up to speed, accelerating, I mean, I am barely getting onto the throttle there. I think they call it like a dynamic pressure turbo, but it basically uses an actuator to increase turbine flow to basically better response when you're not in full boost. And while I've had complaints with the 6-speed auto in the past, I haven't really noticed this do anything funky. It seems like they worked on the tuning here. Or maybe it just works better with the turbo because it has so much torque that it doesn't need to, shift all the time to get me that acceleration. As I mentioned earlier, this transmission is tried and true for Mazda, as are both of the engines at this point. Cylinder deactivation has been an issue with some other brands in the past. The base engine has it, but I don't see any consistent complaint on it. And with the turbo, I would be especially meticulous about oil changes. The CX-50 is being built at Mazda's new Alabama factory, and since it's a new model, I don't have anything else to add outside of Mazda usually sitting toward the top of the class in dependability. One penalty to this powertrain is adequate fuel economy for the class, especially with the naturally aspirated engine. A hybrid model would improve this and is supposedly in the works, but will likely be a previous gen Toyota system, and we have no dates on that yet. And when it comes to safety, you're going to have basically everything standard here. Blind spot monitorings, rear cross traffic alert, of course, autonomous braking, lane departure prevention standard on all of them as well. But that's not lane centering. You can get traffic assist on the top spec CX-50 like mine, but that only works at lower speeds. Mazda is pro-driving, and they've taken the stance that lane centering detracts from that, which I respect, and at least they give you adaptive cruise. But this also brings up another topic, one that I want to close this on. Mazda makes you compromise. And I'm going to apologize for making this whole review a big comparison, but hopefully you'll see why I've done this. Don't get me wrong, this has better visibility than the CX-30 and a more accommodating backseat than the CX-5, the biggest downfalls for those models. Before I drove this, I saw the photos, the pricing, the specs, and thought, this is near the cost of the CX-5. With killer aesthetics and proportions, better ground clearance, and bigger dimensions, depending on their approach, this could make the CX-5 obsolete. But they did it wrong. Instead of just adding to what the CX-5 could already provide, they cut corners on the areas that made the CX-5 best in class. Additionally, they are too close in interior space, capabilities, and starting price to not be direct competitors. Let's face it, there are much more practical, innovative, or off-road capable competitors to both. Mazda can't compete in those regards just yet. They're known for stellar driving dynamics and an upscale feel. While it's fun to drive for the segment, it's not as playful and capable as the CX-5, it's not as luxurious, and the trunk is a little smaller overall. This could have been great. It's like watching your longtime favorite artist release an album that you enjoy, but it misses the personality, that original feeling, so abundantly found in their previous work. The new stuff is still good, and you reason that this has more broad appeal than your favorite project from them. However, you're worried they might be getting a little lazy, and you hold out hope that maybe their next release will put it all together and we'll see them finally reach their full potential. If you're looking for a smallish Mazda SUV that can haul a family with ease, looks and feels modern, handles great, rides well enough, and should be reliable for many years to come, the CX-50 is an excellent choice at a decent price. But if you're willing to trade some of that new style and practicality for a lower price, more character, and a closer attention to detail, Mazda already makes the right SUV for you. Only time will tell if they can combine the strengths of both. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed the video, leave a thumbs up to help me with the ever-elusive YouTube algorithm. Subscribe and hit the bell if you'd like to see more. Thank you to my Patreons for your continuing support. I'll see you in the next one.